also part of WABA. I'm also a landlord. I rented a building for a number of years, and in 1997 had an opportunity to buy my building. It's an acre building, 25 units, about 50 people total, split about 50-50 into live-work spaces and commercial industrial spaces. Learned a lot being a landlord, and I'd like to bring that and my art, being an artist and part of this creative community. My wife is also in the film industry. She works for Lucasfilm, is on the Academy. My daughter has been, she's a fifth grader, about to graduate Oakland Public Schools. It's also an art magnet school, and it's been really delightful to be part of that community, the Peralta. What I'd like to talk about, let's see, how do I do this? That's it, there we go. Is the industrial section. We've talked a lot about living, but a lot of what I do is working. And the impact that the housing crisis has had on industrial spaces. Often the rules that you guys are making are being used by developers in nefarious ways to get control of cheap industrial properties and turn those into what I would call condos, not live workspaces, which is greatly impacting our ability to work and make a living. Several big industrial artists, Karen Cusolito, Burning Man artist. Bruce Beasley, who's been around since the 1960s. This is at the Beijing Olympics, big sculpture that he did there. He's worked a lot around the world, very famous, great person to have in Oakland. Several different industrial artists. This is my snail car that's been in the press and has really brought my art to politics. It's been a really good way for me to impact my local community. Peter Hudson.
Marco Cochran.
Yeah, Marco Cochran.
And the La Victrola crew, all built in part and parcel in Oakland.
Yeah. So these are the kinds of art that's being made, and this is the kind of space. It is definitely industrial. A lot of the spaces that we're using were former shipbuilding, automotive, all World War II factory spaces, again, that are being encroached on by the living, the impact that the crisis, the housing crisis has had on Oakland and the Bay Area in general. This is the Crucible.
Encroached on that in what way?
Developers, again, buying really inexpensive property at $50 a foot, building out, back then at $150 a foot and selling for $300 or $400 a foot. There's no way I can compete with that. Nor could any even NUMMI couldn't compete with that, or Tesla rather now. American Still Studios, that's where a lot of the spaces, a lot of the art that you just saw was built in American Still Studios. And I'd say 50% of the big art that goes to Burning Man comes out of that building right there in West Oakland. Before we go on, the reason why people moved to Oakland, it was really the Wild West, literally in West Oakland, now in East Oakland. You can pretty much do what you want. Nobody asked questions. Nobody came and checked your business licenses. We talked earlier about whether the numbers in this report reflect the actual economy that happens in Oakland. I can tell you no. When I look at the statistics and I look at my 25 tenants in my building, I'm often and not always the only one found there. And I can tell you that my contribution to Oakland is in the millions. And if I'm not showing up on the radar, most of these people are not. There's a huge gray economy that we just trade. We just move commerce around our own neighborhood, trade food. I do lighting for a restaurant, lighting where the restaurant feeds me and my family every night, etc. So there's a huge economy. I'm absolutely positive that you're only looking at a half of what's actually out there. What's attracted people to this neighborhood is also been the detriment now. And I want to say that Ghost Ship is an outlier. I don't see a lot of spaces. We have personally gone through the spaces. I have never seen anything else like that. I have in my past. There's always been that space that you look at and go, oh my God, let's get out of here. But that's the one that exists, right? That existed in Oakland. It's gone. And I didn't see a lot of other spaces like that in our tours. I mean, there's definitely extension cords on the ground, messes in the corner, but nothing like Ghost Ship. And I think what's really affecting our community right now are landlords taking advantage of people to finally push that change that's going to make them more money. That's what I see. The city has relaxed thanks to our mayor, who has stepped up and demanded that people slow down. In her administration, city is not going after people in a big way. Landlords are. And I can see that one of the biggest problems that Oakland has had, because it's the Wild West, there is nobody doing inspections. I mean, I'm a legitimate building. I only see a firefighter come through my building once every other year. And for 5 or 6 years in a row, nothing. When I moved in my building, there were I'm fully sprinklered. I hadn't been inspected in 10 years when I bought the building. We do that regularly. One of the biggest problems I see is right now I need a couple of extra sprinkler heads, literally a couple out of hundreds. And for me to go through the process of getting 2 additional heads in places where people have built lofts is a huge process, taking over a year just to add 2 sprinkler heads. That should be a very simple, just permitting. I have to go re-engineer the whole building. Sprinklers were put into my building originally in 1960 when it was a rag company. Kraft Cheese was the original, that's where Kraft Cheese started, became American Rag. They put in the bulk of the sprinklers when it was converted to offices in the 1980, 87 or so. They added additional sprinklers. And now I would like to upgrade it again to modern code by adding those additional heads. That should be a very simple process over the counter. Somebody should be able to walk in, ask for that, my sprinkler company, and have those installed by next Wednesday. And that's throughout the process of putting in electrical. As a new tenant moves in, they have a kiln for their ceramics. They want to put in a kiln. I'm supposed to pull an electrical permit for that, but there never was a kiln in that space before. We're opening my entire building up to modernization for code. If I modernize every single unit to what today's code is, that effectively puts half of those people out because of the cost that's going to be involved in that. And again, these are not dangerous situations. They're just, every time the code book when I started my building was about a ½ an inch thick, and now it's in volumes. It's hard to keep up with that. And I really want to have the safety there, but there needs to be a way in Oakland to upgrade our buildings in what we're calling compassionate compliance. When the earthquake happened, we didn't immediately demand that everybody fix their roofs and their structures. We took time. There was new spaces in Oakland set up just for pulling permits, et cetera. We need to have that kind of compliance after 20 years of being ignored and not educating the younger generation of what code, zoning, et cetera, are. We need a way to approach that in a more compassionate way instead of, like Ron said, to just come in with a red tag and say, boom, you're done. One of the things we keep running into is rent control in industrial spaces. These spaces, even the live workspaces, are not under rent control, and and I keep being told from our mayor that that's a state issue. It's not a city issue, that we can't have rent control in industrial spaces. So if you guys, I would love that to be looked into. Most of the spaces that are industrial live work is industrial. It's not residential. It's an industrial process or zoning. So anything built after, I think it's now 1995, it keeps.
Yeah, but for
any new construction since that time, Costa-Hawkins.
Yeah, I know, but it's an intriguing. I mean, you're talking about rent control for workspace.
Right.
I'm talking about. I'm a landlord. I realize what I'm asking for. I'm asking for rent control to be thought about in spaces built after 1995. There has to be a way to protect tenants that I mean, I can tell you 90% of the industrial live-work spaces are not under rent control.
Well, Senator Bloom, who's just here, has a bill to repeal Costa-Hawkins, in fact. That is, it's met with a lot of controversy.
Yeah, I can imagine. But there has to be a way of, fully industrial tenants. As a landlord, yeah, we want to make our money on this, but this is a vulnerable group, and I really think there needs to be protection for people who are living in their space, whether it's industrial or not, and for industrial tenants, period. You can't, there's a huge pressure not only on live spaces, but on workspaces. They're now competing hugely. I mean, it's very easy for me. I know because I have both, and it used to be a buck a foot for industrial space that you couldn't live in, and $2 for, and now those numbers are pretty much even, and they're huge. And I don't even get what people ask for. So I had a whole slideshow and presentation here, but I feel like there's a lot more control over people's spaces. Commercial condos, I would love to see, similar to the development that he was doing with Live Work, to have developments like that just for commercial, or I would say industrial. So places for people to work that they own, they end up owning.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to. We have a lot. I could drill down on so many code things. I would love to be more part of a conversation and to let you guys know what's on the ground.